civil society to join you in the call for the banks to cut interest rate, even after the Bank of Jamaica lowered the interest rate 4 times.
Yeah, man.
Finally, we hear some people now joining you.
Yeah, man.
Is it possible that people now will be calling for the minister to come talk to Ralston Hyman and Dr. Andrea Sutherland on Power 106 one of these morning?
Well, we sincerely hope so, because we have been talking about this interest rate thing for almost a year, and we finally see some of the wimpish private sector leaders joining the call, because this is a very important thing, and we're also calling for ministerial intervention if the banks don't voluntarily do it, right? So we hope a lot more people will join the fray and to call, because this is mission critical for Jamaica. What we're seeing, and here's why we're calling for that. Based on the current, people don't understand, Jamaica is only $20 billion as a GDP. The international economy is $105 trillion. America is $29.5 trillion. European Union is $20 trillion. China is $18 trillion. The international economy is dominated by those countries. The Federal Reserve Board, the American Central Bank, is the world's most powerful independent central bank because it manages the American economy and the reserve currency.
Yeah.
Now, what we're seeing is that the Federal Reserve Board started the rate hikes in order to deal with the high levels of inflation, the highest levels of inflation in 40 years caused by COVID-19 and the supply chain breakdown. So that forced international central banks to hike their rates, because if you don't, then there'll be a run on their currency to take advantage of the higher rates in the US, and the US dollar is seen as good money.
Right.
So now that the Fed is coming down, the Bank of Jamaica is taking the opportunity to come down. And what we're seeing is that the banking sector is not responding. Now, when interest rates are lower, it means that you can have more projects and more investments and more jobs and more growth. And that is why we're calling upon the banks to do that, because what we're seeing is that the policies that are going to be pursued by the Trump administration will lead to higher levels of inflation, and then there'll be very few rate cuts. In fact, the chairman of the Fed said there'll be only 1 or 2 rate cuts next year, because inflation is likely to accelerate under the Trump administration.
Right.
So it means that the Bank of Jamaica has very little room to cut rates again. So it means that the country, must get the opportunity to benefit from the 4 rate cuts that are already in place.
And we have not seen the 2 major banks make any move thus far.
No.
Ralston,
Mm-hmm.
if I suggest to you that this present Andrew Holness administration is in the pockets of the banks, hence they are not making any move, what would you say?
Yeah, man, they have demonstrated that they voted en bloc against the proposals by Fitz-Jackson in order to get the banks to behave better in terms of the fees and the services that they give to the public. Yeah, we know that.
So, Andrew Holness and his team voted for the banks against the Jamaican people.
Against the people of Jamaica, yes.
Because Fitz-Jackson brought a bill to the parliament saying, let's defend the people of Jamaica.
That's correct.
And Andrew Holness and his team said no.
Every single man voted against it. Every single one
except
of them.
Mike Henry, who did not turn up.
Yeah.
The entire PNP opposition at the time was about what? 32 members?
Yeah, they voted for it. Yeah,
31 voted for the people. And the Andrew Holness-led administration voted for the banks. And therefore the banks know that they have the backing of this government.
That's correct.
But the people...
To the detriment of the economy and the Jamaican people.
Much people understand that, Ralston?
No, and that is why we are having this continuous education program, trying to get our people to understand the importance of the rate reduction by the banks and let them know that the banks are holding the country hostage.
And who is on their side and who is not.
Precisely.
So, with this recession that we are in now, Ralston, and I ask you this question Saturday morning, but I have to ask you again, what does this mean for the average Joe, the taxi driver, the truck driver?
all right. It means that him will get poorer, right? And him life will get harder. And him woman gonna left him. More man gonna see him and beg him. He have to look out more for the robber them because things are just get harder all around. Simple, straight language.
But explain to them for me. Because the Prime Minister speaks about the fiscal discipline that this government has been dealing with and ensuring that the debt to GDP is down to 70%. Mix that now with the reality of going into a recession for my listeners and viewers.
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister really don't understand too much about economics, because bringing the debt to GDP ratio down to where they have brought it is one of the main factors that has brought the country into a recession. Yeah? So fiscal discipline different from fiscal prudence. Fiscal prudence means that you pay your debt while at the same time taking care of your other responsibilities. What the Prime Minister is caught up in a kind of fiscal slavishness where they are bringing the debt down faster than programmed for while scavenging the people and the country's infrastructure. And all the governments that have done that globally has either been voted out or the governments have been toppled. We see the same thing happening in France. We see that happening in South Korea. We see all those problems taking place. The countries that are growing and doing well, none of them are anywhere near any fiscal and a debt to GDP of 60% or 70%. America is 123%. The UK is 100%. The European Union, which created that rule, is 87%. India, 87%. China, 284%. Japan, 253%. So
what about the Scandinavian countries? How they match up?
All of them are above the 60%, and they have heavy taxes in order to keep them close to that target.
So what is the
heavy
benefit?
Taxes.
What is the benefit to the teachers and the nurses and the firefighter of Jamaica getting GDP down to 60%? Because that's the target, right?
Yeah. There's none right now. What they're telling you is that they can get more money to borrow cheaper. So what they're doing is sacrificing the economy to borrow money cheaper tomorrow. If you grow, you need less money to borrow, and you can have a better living standard, and you can service the debt on a sustainable basis without sacrificing the next generation.
That is if you grow the economy.
Yeah.
So how then, if they are not growing the economy, how do they get the debt to GDP down to this where we are now?
Well, the big ticket items was when Peter Phillips was there. Venezuela sold us $3 billion in debt for $1.5 billion US. That helped us to shave over 20% after the debt. And then when they came in 2017, they changed the definition of the debt and took out the Bank of Jamaica debt, which brought us down to about 80-90%. And remember, that debt to GDP is based on nominal GDP, not real GDP. So we measure growth on real GDP, and we measure debt on nominal GDP. The difference between nominal and real GDP is that you adjust nominal GDP for inflation.
Now, Ralston, hold on, let me check where we are. Oh, we're not at that break yet. Look at a country like Trinidad and Tobago. Where is the Trinidad and Tobago debt to GDP?
Trinidad and Tobago is about 64-65%. And remember, they have oil resources. Barbados is 107%, and they grew by 4.4%. For the first 6 months of this year. Jamaica grew by 0.8%. Mia Motley says she's not coming down to any debt to GDP of 60% before the year 2033, 2034.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she wants policy room to grow the economy and to improve the quality of life of our people.
A country like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, where are those countries as it relates to
them? They don't need to borrow money. Them man, they are net lenders of money. Them man don't really borrow money. Them man, they have oil resources.
So their debt to GDP is single digit.
Yeah, man, because them don't borrow.
But the difference is they are producing.
Yeah, man, so them not for borrow. They are the ones who lend money.
Ralston, what caused this problem? It's not just paying off the debt faster. What else caused Jamaica to be in this situation now?
Well, as we said before, so the government is a major player in the economy. So if the government use the bulk of the taxes to pay down the debt and do not invest in education, do not invest in infrastructure, All those things affect productivity. Those things drive away investment. So they have it mixed up. They believe if they pay down the debt, they'll get more investment. But if you pay down the debt and you don't have any roads, you don't have any educated people, and crime is on the loose, then you're not going to get the level of investments that you expect to get, right? Additionally, they have a private sector that is not very innovative. So if the government creates a condition where it is difficult for them to invest, they are not going to push the envelope and invest. They'll continue to gather margins by pushing paper. So we see the central bank, even today, the central bank came out today and said that they are floating a fixed rate CD at 6.5% per annum for 26 months, and that's $30 billion. So the private sector rather to put their money into those things. So what we see, we have the government at the same time tightening the money supply, Bank of Jamaica tightening money supply. And when they tighten money supply, Bank of Jamaica, they issue paper at high rates, and the private sector people play it safe and put their money in paper rather than in production.
But Ralston, I heard the Prime Minister in a speech, I don't remember if it was at the university at the West Indies, was quarreling about in the 90s when government paper used to be what the investors used to invest in, and basically saying that was bad for the country.
Mm-hmm.
But the government float what, about 4 paper within the last month, 2 months?
No, man, more than that. Every day, every week, them float at least 2-3 paper. Today, Christmas Eve, they just floated $30 billion. The Prime Minister talking foolishness. And that is why I'm telling you about the University of the West Indies, because he should be corrected at that point in time when he said that at the University of the West Indies.
But why now that why after him said that and said it was lazy, why are we now floating these papers?
Because they want to use that in order to prevent people from buying the dollar. Right now, the dollar is overvalued. The dollar is trading at 154. So we move from 161 to 154 while the trade deficit is widening. The rate of exchange is supposed to be a function of what is happening in your external accounts. So that kind of voodoo economics where your external accounts is deteriorating, but the value of your currency is appreciated at the same time.
So what you're saying, hold on, what you just said a while ago, the dollar is overvalued?
Yeah, man.
So are you saying that the Jamaican dollar should be at about 170 to 1 US?
No, what we're saying is that based on the measurement, the dollar should be more trading somewhere in the region of 158, 160 rather than 155. So, but the reason that it is trading at 155 is because they are taking out all the money out of the system. So that is why people are saying, Christmas are coming and the money out of the system. On the government side, the government is using the taxes to pay the debt faster than programmed for. And on the monetary side, the Bank of Jamaica is taking the money out of the system and locking it up in the vault and paying you to keep it in the vault in order to protect the dollar.
You're listening. Ralston. You're listening to Portland Spice TV. You're listening to Styles FM 96.1, 96.5, 96.7 on the FM band. You're listening to Caribbean Radio HD over there in New York and the tri-state area in Florida on internet radio. They are going to be taking a break on this half hour. Jacko, take the break. Join us on the other side. We continue talking to Ralston Hyman. You're not going to miss a lot, people, I assure you. We're taking the break on Styles FM and Caribbean Radio. We'll soon come back. Ralston, Dr. Clark, people were saying that he was the best thing since sliced bread. You never agreed.
No, I fundamentally disagree. He's just an accountant.
The policies that they were pushing, I said to somebody yesterday that I am yet to hear one policy that will push production even after the statement about pivoting. I don't hear how we're going to drive production in this country. Have you heard it?
No, he never even used that terminology. He rarely used the terminologies about production and exports. All he talks about is debt to GDP and primary surplus. What he's doing is relegating economics to an accounting exercise, and that is why I never rated him. He has no policy to deal with production. The best way to pay down the debt is to produce more. And if he really did courses in economics, he would know that Professor Paul Samuels contended that the surest way one generation can place a burden on the next generation is to leave a massive debt burden while under-educating them and not spending on infrastructure. And that is exactly what reached Jamaica. His policies brought Jamaica to a recession.
But Ralston, we spoke about this last week, Saturday morning as well. The fact that in 2016, Jamaica's debt was $2 trillion. Presently, we are at $2.3 trillion. Explain that to my listeners, because you agreed earlier that this present administration is paying the debt faster than we should be paying more on the debt than we should be paying. How though we are owing more than we were owing when this JLP administration took office?
Because he's borrowing more at the same time. That's a con that people don't know. Last year we borrowed $139 billion. This year we're borrowing $260 billion.
So these arguments that them come out and say, we're building the perimeter road in Montego Bay and we never borrow a cent. We buy 100 buses and we never borrow a cent.
Remember, the revenues for the budget is only $1 trillion and the budget is $1.38 trillion. Of that $1.38 trillion, they are borrowing $260 billion.
So they're almost borrowing the 0.3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they might not borrow directly to buy the buses.
But they're borrowing to fund the budget.
And the money for the bus is coming out of the budget.
Correct. Simple.
So
simple.
So hold on. So is a big con business that going around here?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And that's why people must follow the figures. The finances for the budget is $1 trillion in taxes, $260 billion in borrowing, $4.6 billion in grants, and the transfer of $887 million from the Capital Development Fund. That's how the budget is going to be funded.
No new taxes. Is that true?
Well, no new taxes in the sense that they have named a new category of tax. And that is what is confusing the people, but they are collecting more. Because every time when you have a consumption tax, every time people buy something, as the price of that thing goes up, it means that you pay more taxes. So when something is for $100 and you pay the tax on it, you pay $15. When it moves to $200, you pay $30 in taxes. Right. So they are guaranteed to collect more taxes without naming a new category of taxes. And that is how they con the people. So they have named a new category of taxes, but they are collecting more taxes.
Compare Jamaicans, how we are taxed compared to other countries like us around the world.
Well, 30% of GDP is the highest in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's comparable to the European Union, where people see what they get for their taxes. Good hospitals, nuclear bunkers.
Hold on.
The ambulance.
Slow down. You are saying that Jamaicans, we are taxed 30%
of
GDP.
One of the highest tax rates in Latin America and the Caribbean.
How much is American tax?
Well, America is about 25% of GDP. You know, the Scandinavian countries then touch up the 30%.
So this and listeners and viewers, the Scandinavian countries are countries like them European
Sweden
countries,
Denmark,
Sweden,
and all of
Denmark.
them places.
But in those countries you get free health care. Proper free health care, not free health care like Jamaica. Them have nuclear bunker we can take in the entire country. If a nuclear bomb is supposed to be dropped, they will be secured. They have proper roads. They have free education up to the tertiary level.
Yeah, man.
But you are saying in Latin America and the Caribbean, Jamaica is the most taxed country?
Yeah, man, we have one of the highest rates, and I'm saying our rates are comparable to the European Union, where their rates are upwards of 30, 34, 35. So that's who we are keeping company with in terms of taxes, but in terms of the services that the people are getting, we are way below. So we get the taxes, and we use the taxes and pay the debt, and not spend none upon the people.
Let me welcome back the listeners on Styles FM and on Caribbean Radio HD. We're talking to Ralston Iman, the #1 financial analyst in Jamaica and anywhere in the Caribbean. Somebody sent me a message earlier that they would love to see a one-on-one with you and the Prime Minister. I want to tell them that I am sure.
We invite him all for time and turn up.
And he's not going to turn up.
No, with the over we invite him and tell him so we give him the whole program I'm not come. No, come on.